you know that I did this performance in DC at the Phillips Collection about, I don't know, it was 4 months ago, back in February. And uh, it was in collaboration with this exhibit that the Phillips Collection did called Rifts and Relations, African American Artists and the European Modernist Tradition.
Hmm.
And the exhibition explores a dialogue between artwork by European modernists and how African American artists of the 20th and the 21st century have reacted to the established tradition and how they engaged with it and sometimes critiqued its dominance over our understanding of the history of Western art. And so I wanted to first start off uh, asking about your upbringing and your own personal history.
Although I have this background, which is certainly a mixed background. I mean, if even if we go into more specifics, my mother is biracial. Her father is from Guadeloupe. Her mother was from uh, Metropole, I guess they call it, but from France. And they were communists. They were pretty progressive people, atheists. On my father's side of the family, it's a mixture of Baptists and Catholic, pretty fairly conservative Haitian uh, people. It's definitely a mix of cultures already, just that alone between my mother's family and my father's family. I didn't feel so much an alien in terms of that. I was slightly different, I think, because of my interests. I think growing up also with my sister, who has always been very different and very interested in all kinds of strange things, and getting that encouragement from her when I was in middle school to really lean into the things that make me strange. And it was particularly as it related to Black culture. It was accepting that Black culture was not a one thing, but that it was this multitude of different things and that I could find my way inside it without necessarily mimicking what I thought it was.
Your discovery of jazz, which is what you're known for, you initially became known for as a jazz vocalist. Uh, that was in France, through people like Jean-Francois Bonnel and others, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's so
so,
strange.
yeah, I mean, uh, and you just kind of stumbled upon jazz in your late teens, and your mother, of course, encouraged you to submit a CD to the Thelonious Monk competition, and you won that, and the rest is history. But as I witness your artistic endeavors beyond music now, I mean, and going into the realms of visual art and theater, um, uh, I really see the full scope of all of the influences that has that that's shaped who you are.
I was thinking about this today, for instance, when we put an album together, um, we typically, and I'll say we, but I'll say I can speak for myself, but I know this of a lot of musicians. We put the album together and then we put the concept together, right? Then we put a concept or a theme on it. We find a title. So concept and themes almost come after the content. If I were to say there is one unifying theme in everything that I do, it would be I could try and I could like find some kind of BS answer to that, but it would be BS because I think that up until and actually still now, I'm I'm studying I feel like I'm in study mode, I'm in collecting mode, I'm in research mode, and I'm just trying testing things out. Um, and there are ideas that I am drawn to, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that they unify everything that I've done. I mean, sometimes I just want to sing a standard, and it doesn't have to necessarily deal with the history of cultural appropriation in American culture. But the history of cultural appropriation and cycles of appropriation are uh, those cycles are fascinating to me, and that's something that I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in the act and intention of blackface and what that means, both literally and figuratively. So definitely exploration of identity, storytelling, like not even so much identity, but the way that we talk about identity, the way that we identify ourselves, the way um, that we tell our stories. That's fascinating to me. It's almost even more fascinating than the story itself, just the way in which it is told. There are a lot of racial themes, like explorations of race, of what that means. But I think I also am interested in absurdity too. I think singing is one of the most absurd acts a human being can do, and certainly singing on a stage. And I think that there is something about the absurdity of that act that I would like to explore more, and I would like to. I don't know how, but it's certainly something I'm thinking about, because I think that I am attracted to absurdity. I mean, that's also the reason I am so interested and fascinated with blackface, and particularly with Black performers wearing blackface.
Well,
Um,
I was thinking about Dave Chappelle in an interview I think he gave with Gayle King a few years ago, talking about this. Someone who said that comedy is a reconciling of paradoxes and just the absurdity of how things can be. I mean, think about Burt Williams, who was a black man, and of course you've discussed Burt Williams extensively, and you've performed no, you recorded and performed Nobody, and someone who was black in the early aughts of the 20th century is who performed in blackface, imitating a white person performing in blackface. I mean, that's just there's so many layers to that, and I'm going to share this work that you recently created. Welcome to the Menstrual Show. Okay, one more I want to share too is what's the medium here?
that is a digital drawing that's done on an iPad.
Oh wow! I know you're in the works right now of doing an animation or having someone animate Ogress, which you've already recorded. I know that's something that you're working on right now, and that's going into more of the theatrical song cycle territory. Um, I mean, tell me if you want to describe a little bit about it.
I've been saying that it is a musical fairy tale or a musical fable, 80 minutes, in which I sing the role. I am the narrator and I embody all these different characters. And it's just continuous music with a 13-piece orchestra. And I think Ogress, similarly to what I was saying about my interests in music, it certainly deals with appropriation and what that means. I mean, it's not a coincidence that the foundational instrument of the piece is a banjo, and that is because the banjo is an African instrument, which has now then in the American imagination certainly been associated with not only white musicians, but quite often racist white musicians and racist white fiddle bands, some of which performed Run Nigger Run in a literal way, even though that is a slave song. But anyway, I digress. That's the banjo in Ogress. And that's part of the thinking behind cycles of appropriation. But the other thing about Ogress is that it is a piece about the fetishism of the Black female body, and also, both about all kinds of violence done to the Black female body, whether that is sexual violence, whether that is physical violence, but also the commodification of the Black female body, also the emotional and spiritual violence done against the Black female body with established European standards of beauty, things such as that. So
Let me ask you then. I mean, thinking about the Phillips collection's theme with European masters and African Americans, uh, you have elements of Baroque music, Baroque language in Ogress, and in general, and you also studied Baroque singing, like how you grapple or reconcile these seemingly two different or opposing forces in some people's eyes between what is the African diaspora and then what is sort of like the uh, imperialist, what's represented as like the imperialist colonialist art form.
I think I think it is the tradition of uh, the diaspora, and more specifically Black culture, to embrace seemingly contrasting things, and more specifically to use the colonizers' um, culture within Black culture. I mean, you look at the church, you look at jazz. It's all in there, and I don't see why. I mean, I would consider that Bach's music, that Monteverdi's music is my legacy as well. I mean, that's my music too. Um, I have European roots. All Black Americans have European roots. Anyone who is a descendant of slavery has European roots, and that is our culture as well.
I mean, these are all wonderful observations that you've given. I just wanted to share a few other pieces of art that you've done. And when do you think, uh, if you have an idea of when you'll be able to do another showing of your work and the embroidery that you've been working on?
My plan is to do a show with only embroidery, large scale embroidered pieces, about 10 to 15. And each piece takes me a really long time. I need to amp up my speed a little bit, but I think if I were to do that show, the show of my dreams, then it would have to be in maybe 1 to 2 years. And actually, I printed it on silk. That's like a new thing that I'm trying.
What about this? This is one of your drawings.
Yes.
Is this a recent one, or is this something that you've?
Yeah, it's recent. I did it in Miami a couple months ago. I feel like that is a sketch for a larger embroidered piece that I made. But I think this is actually from a 18th century manual, like dancing manual, Baroque dance manual. It was an engraving, and I started to play around with it.
Well, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure having you come on and share your insight with us. And you want to end with a poem?
Sure. I'll read something by Hafiz. Zero is where the real fun starts. There's too much counting everywhere else.